Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for attending. In this session, we're going to be taking a look at how you can give the right information to the right people. So we're going to be focusing on security and access in this 1-hour session. Now, you've been provided two guides. Okay, we have two guides here. The first guide is a copy of our PowerPoint presentation, so feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint presentation. The second guide is step-by-step exercise steps. So we're going to give you lots of hands-on practice on setting up your security and access. So this exercise guide, you can use it during this hour, or you may just want to use it as a reference when you go back to work. All right, fantastic. So let's get started. My name is Tammy Lamb. I'm a master instructor with Salesforce.com. I've been with Salesforce for approximately 3 years, and I'm based in the Sydney, Australia office. I'm currently a certified administrator, and my next credential is Advanced Certified Administrator. And here we have our safe harbor statement. I'm sure you've seen Mark show this at the beginning of his presentation. This is just to let you know that there may be some forward-looking statements in this session. And also, there may be some features that are in this session that aren't available on all purchase editions. So just make sure you make all your admin and implementation decisions based on the edition you have. Okay? You can find the safe harbor statement on our website as well, so you can get some more information on that. Great. Okay, so those of you that have just joined us and haven't had a chance to log in yet, we're going to give you hands-on exercises, which means we're also going to be providing you a training org. So in your guide on page 2, you'll see these instructions to log into your training org. So just open up your browser. You should be on the Salesforce login page, and you're going to be logging in with the username admin@df09, right people, and then you'll need to put in a unique 3-digit code. And that 3-digit code you'll actually see on your monitor in the top right-hand corner. That's your unique 3-digit code, .com, and password is password1. Password all lowercase and then the number 1. Okay, so go ahead and log into your org and let us know if you have any, if you need any help. We have plenty of helpers. Helpers, could you raise your hand, please? Plenty of helpers around, so please let us know if you need a hand. Okay, everyone's in? Fantastic. So in this 1-hour training session, we're going to cover aspects of security and access. So you have a lot of data in your Salesforce instance. You want to make sure you give the right information to the right people. Okay, you want to be able to provide the information that a user requires to do their day-to-day job. No more, no less. So the topics we're going to cover is taking a look at your organization-wide defaults and see what that controls. We'll also give you an exercise for org-wide defaults. We'll then take a look at roles and role hierarchy and how you can open up information using your hierarchy. Give you an exercise on that as well. Okay, we'll also take a look at creating sharing rules. Okay, sharing rules allows you to open up even more data. Okay, we'll have an exercise on that. And then we'll also take a look at manual sharing. We'll review security and access, and we'll open it up to questions and answers. Okay? So when you think about giving the right information to the right people, the first thing you need to decide is how to set up your organization-wide defaults. This is your starting point for security and access. So your organization-wide default is your baseline level of security. Okay, this is your default access on the data in certain objects. So if we take a look at the screen here, we can see leads have been set to public read-write, or public read-write and transfer. This is the most open default setting. This means that all users can view all lead information. They can edit all lead information regardless of who owns it. Okay, so that's our first setting of organization-wide defaults, public read-write or public read-write and transfer. If we take a look at the example of contacts, we've set in this example contacts as public read-only. Public read-only means that people can view all contact data, but they can only edit it if they own the contact record. Okay? Our third setting, if we take a look here, example on cases, that's the most restrictive setting. That's private. That means that people can only view cases if they own that case record. Okay, so those are our 3 settings for organization-wide defaults. Public read-write, public read, and private. Okay, and you make those decisions on different business objects. So how do you know how to set your organization-wide defaults? Well, what you need to do is think about all your users and consider each of those objects. Okay, so let's think about leads. So I think about leads, I think about all my users, and I think, is there anyone in my organization who shouldn't be able to view all lead information or edit all lead information? And if the answer is, I'm okay with everyone being able to view and edit, then you set your level of security to public read write. And if you think, well, actually there's a small group of people, even one person, I'm not sure if I want them to be able to view all leads and edit all leads. Okay, well then you think about what's their restriction. Well, I'm happy for them to see it, so then you know you need to set your org-wide defaults to public read. If you think, oh, there's some leads I don't want them to see, then you need to set it to private. And that's how you decide how to set your organization-wide defaults. And again, you set them on different business objects. All right, so let's now go into our training org and let's review organization-wide defaults. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and take a look at a user record. We're going to take a look at our organization-wide defaults. And then we're going to test it. We're actually going to go in, log in as a user, and see which accounts they can see. So in this scenario, we're administrators for AW Computing. We have a new colleague on board who's an EMEA sales rep. So we want to make sure that they're seeing the data that they should be. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead. So again, you have an exercise guide that'll walk you step by step, but you can just listen to the click paths that I call out. Okay? So firstly, to get started, you're going to look at the very top. You're going to find your setup link. So look at the very top. You'll see a black link for setup. Go ahead and click on to setup. In the left-hand area, you're going to go to the third section, and you're going to take a look at administration setup, and you're looking for security controls. Go ahead and open up security controls. Okay. Under security controls, you're looking for sharing settings. So open up sharing settings. And this is where we can find our organization-wide defaults. Okay? So currently at AW Computing, we can see our organization-wide defaults for leads is public read write. So everyone, all my users, can view all leads and they can edit all leads regardless of who owns it. If we take a look at accounts, contacts, opportunities, and cases, we can see that it's been set to the most restrictive, private, which means people can only see information if they own it. Okay? So now let's actually test it. Let's go find our new colleague named Lars Ross. So let's access Lars's user record. Let's go up to Manage Users. Let's click on to Users. And we're looking for a gentleman named Lars Ross. So you're looking for the last name Ross, Lars Ross. Now, when we look at Lars's name, we can see on the right-hand side that he's been assigned our EMEA sales rep role. Okay. Let's go in and log in as Lars and see how he's going to see accounts. Now, Salesforce, we have the ability to log in as a user. So next to Lars's name, you see a login link. Has anyone done this before? Yeah, excellent. Great way to troubleshoot. Great way for an administrator to see the application from another point of view. So in bright red at the top, once you log in as one of your users, you're going to see at the top you're currently logged in as Lars. So Lars is one of our EMEA sales reps, and remember our organization-wide defaults are set to private. So if Lars clicks onto the Accounts tab, so go ahead and click onto the Accounts tab. If he goes to click onto All Accounts, let's see what he sees. No records at this time, even though in Salesforce there are plenty of accounts. But at this moment, Lars hasn't been assigned any accounts. Okay? So let's go ahead and let's create a new account. Okay? So we're logged in as Lars. Lars is going to create a new account. So go ahead and click onto the New Account button. And we're just going to go ahead and create a new account called ABC Company. Okay? Anyone needs a hand? Just please raise your hand. Okay, helper please. Yep, fantastic. So go ahead and enter ABC Company as the account name. Normally we fill out all these fields, but at this point just go ahead and click Save. So remember, we're creating this new account, okay, and it's as if Lars has created this account. So now, as Lars, let's click onto the Accounts tab, and let's run that same view, All Accounts. Okay, help her over here, please. Okay. So now that we run All Accounts, we're able to see that the account that Lars just created, he can now view it. And this is how, in an environment where our organization-wide defaults are set to private, this is how it'll behave. Okay. So that's covering organization-wide defaults. So now that we've taken a look at organization-wide default, this is our default baseline level of security. This is where we restrict access. Now we have to consider how we're going to start opening up access. Okay. So the next, oh, sorry, by the way, don't forget to log out as Lars. So now that we're finished viewing Salesforce from Lars's point of view, at the very top, don't forget to click Log Out so we're back in as administrators. Okay, excellent. So let's go back to our PowerPoint deck. So the second area of security and access we want to take a look at is roles and role hierarchy. So the way it works is that you're going to create roles and you're going to add them to a hierarchy. And how the hierarchy works is that any records owned by a subordinate, those records will be visible to their manager, to their manager's manager, right up to the very top. So if we take a look at our role hierarchy here, we can see that at the very top we have our VP of Global Sales. And reporting into the VP of Global Sales, we have a US region and an EMEA region. In the US region, we have a US Sales Director. Reporting into the US Sales Director, we have a Sales Operations Manager, a Sales Manager, and reporting into the managers, we have reps. So the way role hierarchy works is that if your reps own any data, that will automatically be visible to their managers, managers, right up to the very top. And don't forget, if you can view information in Salesforce, you can also run a report on those records. So now that we understand how role hierarchy works, let's actually go into the org and predict what information a manager will be able to see. So we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at our role hierarchy. We're going to see how it's structured. And then we're going to log in as the EMEA Sales Director. And now that we understand how the role hierarchy works, we'll predict that the EMEA Sales Director can see all of her subordinates' information. Okay, so let's go in and take a look at roles and role hierarchy. So at the very top, you're going to click on to Setup. Then you're going to go to Administration Setup. Under Administration Setup, you open up Manage Users, and this is where you'll find roles. Okay. So go ahead and click onto Roles. This is a nice splash page which just gives you some examples of how you may want to set up your role hierarchy. Go ahead and click on to Set Up Roles. So this is our role hierarchy. You're going to see a black link at the top that allows you to expand all. So go ahead and click on to Expand All. And here we structured your role hierarchy. So this is how it works. You'll see at the top of your role hierarchy, there's the CEO. And reporting to the CEO, you follow the dotted lines, and we see that there's the VP of Global Sales. Reporting into the VP of Global Sales, again, we follow the dotted lines. We see an EMEA Sales Director and a US Sales Director. And reporting into the EMEA Sales Director, we have an EMEA Sales Rep. So now that we've seen the role hierarchy in Salesforce, now let's log in as the EMEA Sales Director and predict what accounts she can see. So let's go into Manage Users, Users, and we're looking for Maria. Okay, she should be the second user, Maria Bolzani. And we can see over to the right, she is our EMEA Sales Director. So let's log in as Maria. See in the top, in red, we're logged in as Maria. Let's go ahead and click onto the Accounts tab. And let's use our View All Accounts. So when Maria goes and views all accounts, the results will show her all the accounts. Some of these accounts are owned by her. So if you take a look at the far right-hand column, you see the owner alias. Some of these accounts are owned by her, and some of these accounts are owned by her subordinate. Okay, we have David, we have Jessica. We can see that all of these accounts are in the EMEA region. Now, just to prove that to you, what we can do is either click onto David's name or Jessica's name, and we can just take a quick look at the person's user record. Okay, so Michelle here, she's clicked onto David's name, and she can see that David has been set up as an EMEA sales rep. Therefore, as an EMEA sales director, Maria can see her information as well as all of her subordinates' information. Okay. So that's now how we roll information up our hierarchy. Okay, let's go back to our training deck. And don't forget to log out as Maria. Okay, so we logged out as Maria, and now we can go back to our training deck. So now that we've considered how information will roll up your hierarchy, what happens if you need to share information across your hierarchy? Okay? People to do their day-to-day job, they need to be collaborative, they need to see each other's information. So this is where we consider sharing rules. Sharing rules will give you your lateral access, and this is where you can share information across your role hierarchy. Okay? So let's take a look at our scenario, our next scenario. So we want to make sure that the EMEA sales region and the US sales region can see each other's information. They need to be collaborative on global deals, and at the moment, with the structure of the role hierarchy, they cannot see each other's information. So we're going to go into Salesforce, and we're going to take a look at how you can create a sharing rule to provide this information. Okay. So again, let's go into Salesforce. We're going to click on to Setup. Okay. In the last section, we're going to go to Administration Setup, and you're looking for Security Controls. Okay, let's open up Security Controls. And we're going to click on to Sharing Settings. Now, Sharing Settings is where we saw our organization-wide defaults. Okay. But if you scroll down, this is also where you can set up your sharing rules. And we have different sharing rules. We have account and contact and lead sharing rules, okay, as well as custom objects. Okay. So in our scenario, we want to make sure that our EMEA and US teams can see each other's accounts, contacts, opportunities. So we can go ahead and create an account sharing rule. So where you see account sharing rule, click onto New. And this is how it works. Now, if you're new to creating sharing rules, take your time and just read across the row. So we want to create a sharing rule for any accounts owned by members of who? And these are your options. You can go by a public group. Public groups are really useful. You can group roles or roles and subordinates or even individual users. Okay, it's a nice way to cut down the amount of sharing rules usually. So you can choose a public group. You could choose roles, and you can also choose roles and subordinates. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and choose roles and subordinates. Okay, so again, let's just read across. Any account owned by members of roles and subordinates, and we're going to choose EMEA, US Sales Director. So any accounts owned by roles and subordinate U.S. Sales Director, so that's saying the U.S. Sales Director and anyone below, who are we going to share it out with? So we'll go to the second row, and we're going to share it out with roles and subordinates, EMEA Sales Director. All right. Now, what kind of access do I want to give them? Okay. Your options are to provide read-only access or full access, which is read-write. Not only can they see their information, but they can edit the information as well. Let's provide them read-only. Let's also provide them read-only access on contacts, opportunities, and also cases. So we take a look at the screen. This is what we're doing here. We're creating an account sharing rule so that any account owned by the EMEA Sales Director and below, sorry, the US Sales Director and below, we're going to share it out to the EMEA team. Okay? And we're going to give read-only access on accounts, contacts, opportunities, and cases. So let's go ahead and click Save. Okay, click OK. And we're running the sharing rule. And when it completes, as of this moment, you've now created the sharing rule so that our EMEA region can see all the U.S. information. Okay, so it'll come up in their search results, and it will also come up when they run a report. Now, this sharing rule, it's only in one direction. So if we want the U.S. to be able to see the EMEA's information, we got to create a second sharing rule. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to Account Sharing Rules, click New, and we're going to choose Accounts Owned by Roles and Subordinates, EMEA Sales Director, and we're going to share it out with Roles and Subordinates, U.S. Sales Director. And in this scenario, we want to give them the same amount of access. We'll give the U.S. team the same amount of access to the EMEA information. So that means we're going to set accounts to read only, contacts, opportunities, and cases. Okay, go ahead and click Save, and click OK. And again, when you set up these sharing rules, these are automatic sharing rules. So what it means is that you're sharing this out information as soon as this sharing rule has saved, but moving forward, any new accounts owned by anyone in those teams are automatically going to be shared out to the other region. Okay, so anything that's newly created or anything that's been transferred to them, well, the sharing rule will apply. I'm sorry? So the sharing rule will apply to any existing records owned by these members, as well as in the future, if I'm an EMEA sales rep and I create a new account, for example, that new account will also be shared out to the U.S. team. Okay? All right, good stuff. All right, so in our security and access, we've taken a look at organization-wide defaults. This is where we set our baseline level of security. This is our starting point when we consider security and access. Okay, so this is where we restrict access to objects. Now, assuming you've restricted access in some way, you then want to consider how to open up doors. So then we considered roles and role hierarchy. And how it works is that the data will be distributed up the role hierarchy, so a manager can always see their subordinates' information. Okay. The third way we just took a look at was creating a sharing rule. And the sharing rule is going to give you lateral access. This is where you can share information across your hierarchy. Okay. All right, let's go back to our deck. So we've taken a look at org-wide defaults, we've taken a look at role hierarchy, and we've taken a look at sharing rules. Okay, what happens if you want to share out one record at a time? This is something that we call manual sharing. Okay, so manual sharing will provide one-off access to a record. Now, when I say one-off, it's not that a person can only see it once and that's it, but we mean you're sharing one record at a time. And this gives you that flexibility. Okay. All right, let's take a look at our next exercise. So let's say we have a user named Phil. Okay, Phil is having a problem with one of his accounts, and he needs Roberta's help. Okay, so the problem is Roberta can't currently access Phil's account. So Phil's going to manually share the information to Roberta. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into Salesforce. We're going to log in as Phil. Okay, we're going to take a look at one of our accounts, and we're going to show you how he can manually share it out to Roberta. All right, so let's click on to the Setup. Okay, scrolling down to the left-hand area, we're looking for Administration Setup. We're going to click on to Manage Users, and then click on to Users. All right, so we're taking a look at our user table, and we want to log in as Phil Smith. So let's find Mr. Smith, and next to his name, you'll see a login link. So go ahead and click Login, and we're now in as Phil. Okay, so Phil's on the phone with Roberta. She's one of our support people. So Phil's in Salesforce. He clicks onto his account, and he opens up one of his accounts. Go ahead and click onto any one of those accounts that turn up. So we click onto the Accounts tab, use My Accounts, and go ahead and click onto any one of those account names. So Phil is looking at his account record. He's talking to Roberta on the phone, and he goes, Roberta, I'm really having some issues with this account. Can you help me out? You know, can you see my account record? So Roberta's on the phone. Okay. She might do a search on Acapella account. Okay. Or another thing that you can do is every record in Salesforce has a unique Salesforce ID. Okay. And that Salesforce ID is visible in the URL. So take a look at the URL that you see right now on your screen. And that URL contains the unique Salesforce ID, which means that this URL is unique. So a nice thing to show your users is that they can pass records to each other by simply copying the URL, and Phil can email the URL to Roberta, or he can IM it to her. Okay? When she receives the link, she'll be able to click onto that unique URL, and she'll be able to see the record, assuming that she has login access to Salesforce. If she doesn't have access to that record, she's going to see in Salesforce insufficient privileges. Okay. Has anyone done this before, where you send the URL to other users? Okay, great way of passing information back and forth. So Roberta clicks onto the link and says, oh, Phil, I can't see the record. Can you share it out to me? Okay, so this is what Phil can do. On the account record, you're going to see a sharing button. Okay? Okay, who can share? The owner of this record, anyone above them in the role hierarchy, and also system administrators. Okay? Now, if your organization-wide defaults are open, it's public read-write, okay, everyone can see everything, everyone can edit everything, you actually won't see the sharing button because there's no need to share information. But otherwise, if your security is, if it's more restrictive, you're going to see the sharing button. So Phil needs to share this record out to Roberta. So he clicks onto the sharing button. And clicking onto the sharing button, he can see who already has access to this account. Okay, and that could be based on sharing rules. Now, if Phil wants to share this to Roberta, he's going to click onto the Add button. And Phil can share out this account record to a public group. He can share it out to roles and subordinates, or he can pick and choose which users. And it can be a combination of any of these as well. So he's going to choose users, and he's looking for Roberta. Okay, so we're going to select Roberta in the left-hand area and use your add arrow to move Roberta to the right-hand side. Okay. And then Phil can decide what type of access he wants to give Roberta. Okay. So down below, he's going to give Roberta read-only access on the account, and he'll also give read-only access on any related contacts, opportunities, and cases. But he can make this decision. Okay, go ahead and click Save. And as of that moment, Roberta will be able to view Phil's account. So if he emailed that unique URL to her, she can click onto the same URL now, and she'll be able to see the account record. If she searches for it, she'll now see it in a search result. And again, if you can see information, you can run a report on it. So she runs a report on all accounts, his account will pop up. And she's going to have this access. She'll be able to look at his account over and over again until he or his manager or an administrator decides to delete this manual sharing rule. Okay? So we do see on the left-hand side that you do have the ability to delete the manual sharing rule. Okay. So now that we've taken a look at manual sharing, let's log out as Phil. And we're back in as an administrator. Okay, let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. So in this slide, this is a summary of security and access. So what we see here is a wedge. And if you imagine each section in the wedge is the amount of records and the amount of users that can access records. So the first thing when you're looking at security and access and giving the right information to the right people, you first need to consider your organization-wide defaults. It's your baseline level of security, and this is where you're going to restrict access on business objects. Okay. So your organization-wide default settings, you have the option to set it to public read-write, public read, and private, private being the most restrictive. Okay, assuming you've locked down your organization-wide defaults in some way, you now have to consider how you want to open up access. Okay, so the next thing you're going to consider is your role and your role hierarchy. So you create roles, you put them in a hierarchy, and that's going to give you the vertical access to data. So information owned by a subordinate, it's going to be visible to a manager, the manager's manager, right up to the very top. Okay, so when we look at our wedge, we can now see that we've opened up more data to more users. Okay, so once we've considered roles and role hierarchy, we now have to think about how we're going to share information across our hierarchy. And that's when we think about sharing roles. Okay, so sharing roles will give you lateral access, and you can share information amongst public groups, roles and subordinates. The final area we took a look at was manual sharing. And this is going to give you that ultimate flexibility of being able to share one record at a time. Okay. Who can manually share? The owner of the record, anyone above them in the role hierarchy, and also a system administrator. Okay. All right. So we've just walked you through giving the right information to the right people. Okay. This is just a small portion of our some of our classes that we offer at Salesforce. Okay, so if you're interested in taking a look at our full admin workshop, okay, you can head over to our Success Team booth, or you can go to our website and take a look at training and certification, and that'll give you more information. Okay, so we'll open it up to questions and answers in a moment. But before we do that, if you, in your test org, if you take a look at your Home tab, on the left-hand area, okay, just open up your left-hand column where you have your search area. Okay, there's a link we provide for a course survey. Okay. You can go ahead and click onto that course survey. And if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes, you can give us some feedback. We're asking for feedback for all of our hands-on training sessions. Okay. That would be fantastic. Can you just flip to the PowerPoint again? Okay. While we're looking at that, okay, just to let you know that for Dreamforce, we're providing a 10% discount on any training that you sign up for. So if you're interested or if you have any questions about the courses we offer, again, you can go to the Success Team. We also have members of our training account executive team at the back of the room as well. And don't forget to get certified. Salesforce has a certified program, so you can become a certified administrator. Okay, and again, you can go to our website. So at this point, we can open it up to any questions that you might have about giving the right information to the right people. Yes?
On the manual sharing, we've been doing that via the accounting by adding
Okay, good question. So the question was, some of you may be familiar with using account teams and sales teams. Account teams is actually another way of sharing information. So you can actually create a team on your accounts, and you can share account information. So that's an area that we didn't mention here that will give those people the same access. The nice thing about account teams is that each person can have a default account team, and the benefit of that is that they don't have to share out account by account. Another benefit of account teams is that you can run reports across account teams. So that's an additional benefit that you don't have with manual sharing. So with account teams, I can run a report, show my account team members, and show their role for that account as well. Okay, great question.
Thank you. Is there logic in Salesforce that keeps duplicate entries from going in? So if somebody may not have access to a group and goes out there that keeps them from putting in a company that, or an account that you may already have in there that somebody else can see?
Okay, great question. So the question was, if you have an account in there and based on your security and access, people can't see that account, right? You're ultimately going to get a duplicate account name. So that's something to consider when you set your organization-wide defaults to private on accounts. That's ultimately what's going to happen. So generally, if you're concerned about duplicate records, that's why a lot of organizations will set accounts to public read only. Okay, so that way people are able to search on account information and not duplicate accounts. If that's not available due to company policy or how you want to share information, like I said, that's going to be the ultimate result of having accounts set as private. You will have duplicate account names. There is one area in Salesforce called the Account Owner Report, which you can activate for your users in a private sharing model. Okay, so this is available in Salesforce. You can find more information in Help and Training. It's something that the system administrator can activate, but it's called the Account Owner Report. And what that allows your users to do in a private sharing model is that they can click onto a link to access the Account Owner Report, type in an account name, and although they can't see it in your private model, they're able to see the account name, who owns it, who created it, and created by, so then they can call that person up and maybe coordinate manual sharing. Wildcards will definitely help. I think in that scenario we're saying that they're definitely, restricted from that information. I definitely know a lot of you guys are concerned about duplicate accounts, duplicate records. When we train users, we always ask them to search first before they enter a new record. But if they can't see it in a private model, then it'll still result in duplicate accounts.
On the user's screen, you have the login option.
Yeah.
How do you get that option to show up for a user?
Okay, so in our exercises, we walked you through logging into a user. So Michelle, would you mind opening up Salesforce? Okay, so we walked you through going into Setup, going into Admin Users, Manage Users, and clicking onto Users. Salesforce has the ability to grant login access. It is available on Enterprise Edition and above. And what this allows you to do, as we've seen, is it allows you to log in as a user and see Salesforce from their point of view. Now, you cannot automate this grant login feature. You require each user to grant you login access. So this is how you achieve that. Each user would have to go into the Setup option. Each user would have to click on to Personal Setup, Personal Information. And under Personal Information, you have a link that says Grant Login Access. And this is what your user will have to do in order to grant you login access as an administrator. Okay? It's not something that we can automate. Okay? So at this point, your user can grant you login access for a day, for a week, for a month, for 5 years. And when they grant you login access, that's when you'll see the login link next to their name. Okay? Now be careful though, because when you are logged in as a user, the system ultimately thinks you are them. So if you delete anything, create anything, it'll actually say it's been created by that person. But this is a great way to troubleshoot. So if I'm talking to Phil on the phone and something's happening in Salesforce, I don't ask for his password because best practice, we don't share passwords. I walk him through on giving me login access. I can log in as him. Okay, so we can be logged in at the same time, and we can try to reproduce that error or those issues so then I can help troubleshoot. Okay, great feature in Salesforce.
I just have a quick question. For the hierarchy, when you have a regional sales director and then below there you have a sales rep, they have access to the sales rep's records and they can also edit them. And that's a real concern for us. But we can't do read-only on the custom fields because some of the accounts were also sold by a regional sales director, so they have to be able to edit those. So how do you keep a regional sales director from being able to edit their subordinates' records?
So as long as they have edit access on that object via their profile, they will have the same permissions on their for their records as well as their subordinates' information. Not that I know of, but let's talk about that offline, and I don't know of any way, so as long as a manager through their profile, they're able to edit an object, they'll be able to also edit their subordinates' information. If you can see, so the question is there a way that you can run a report even if you can't see the information? Is that the question?
The actual name to the accounts, but know how many accounts are in the system. Is there any way to have that?
So the answer is if you can see the information, you can run a report on it. But, which means if you cannot see the information, you cannot run a report on. Apart from that account owner report, which is an exception, which is still not going to give you the information you want, that's pretty much the rule.
I have a question. I'm a delegated admin, and when we go into users, on some users I have the login button, and some that I don't, even though they've granted access. And I know it probably has to do with our roles. Do we need to move the delegated admin role up higher, or is there any sharing with users that can be done?
Okay, so when you, so that's a good question. So delegated administration is a pretty new feature in Salesforce. It allows a system administrator to choose a group of people and give them special permissions without making them a full system administrator. So a delegated administrator has special permissions, like they're able to create new user records, but they have a subset of profiles and roles that they can assign. Also, a delegated administrator has the ability to log in, like we saw there. But they can only log in for the people that have either granted them login access or that they're in charge of in the, as a delegated administrator. So if you want more access, right, it's up to your system administrator to be able to provide that for you. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Territory management. The question is, if you're using territory management, how do these rules apply, right? Good question. Territory management, some of you guys might not be so familiar with it. Territory management allows you to share information where it's criteria-based. So we've seen with security and access, right, we base it a lot on roles and subordinates. But if your company works across a lot of verticals or a lot of territories, this is where you may want to take a look at territory management. So territory management gives you the ability to share information based on some sort of criteria rather than based on who owns that account. When it comes to territory management, you often use that alongside with your organization-wide defaults. So you use them in conjunction. Okay, and that's how most organizations will use it. Okay, so you have your organization-wide defaults, roles, role hierarchy, sharing rules, and then you can use your territory management alongside with your security and access. Okay.
What works first? Would it be the criteria on the territories, or first?
In what order do you do it? You know, I would say probably best practice, set up your org-wide defaults, your role hierarchy, and sharing rules, and then set up your territory management. But it really depends on the scenario of your organization. So it'd probably be best to take a look at the community website or maybe consult, whether it's a consulting partner or one of our professional services. But from what I've seen, we normally set up the traditional security and access area, and then we add territory management. Okay, so the question is there a way that you can set up a sharing rule to update a sales team? So sharing rules is kind of separate from sales team. Anything you want to do on the sales team, you actually have to go to the sales team related list and either add people, delete people. You can also change roles or update team rule names, but it's kind of on the side of. Correct. So the question is there a way that you can adjust who can update sales teams, right? So the people that can update a sales team is the person who owns the opportunity, anyone above them in the role hierarchy or system administrator. And no, it's only going to be those people that can update. Yeah.
When you grant access, you're giving them access to everything that's on the record, but we've done a lot of customization and have a lot of related lists. And what if we don't want to give other users access to all of the related lists, just specific pieces of information?
Okay, so those related lists, those customizations, those custom objects, you actually apply the same sharing rules that you do on standard objects. So organization-wide defaults, you can set those custom objects to private. And the same rules will apply. So any custom objects owned by a subordinate will be visible to their manager. And then if you want to open up access to those custom objects, you can also apply sharing rules. So everything that we walk through in terms of org-wide defaults, roles and role hierarchy, and sharing rules, we took a look using accounts. You can actually apply all those settings on custom objects as well. Okay. Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to inquire about how sharing rules, role hierarchy interact with the permissions that are actually set on the profile level.
Okay.
Like how do those work together?
Good question. All right. So we know about profiles, right? Every user. So this isn't a topic that we covered yet. We didn't cover it in security and access. Profiles is a really important area in Salesforce. Every user is assigned a profile. And your profile ultimately decides what you can do in Salesforce and how you see Salesforce. So what tabs, what applications, whether or not you can send out a mass email. On a profile, right, you can also, thank you, Michelle. When we go ahead and edit, so Michelle's just brought up a profile. If we go ahead and edit, and if we scroll down, at the bottom of the profile area, this is where you can set object permissions. So anyone with this profile, you can decide whether or not the people can read, create, edit, or delete on an object. Okay? I like to think of it as profile always wins. So if I say that the person can't read any of this object, they will not be able to see information, even if wherever they're positioned on the role hierarchy, regardless of your sharing rules. So I always say profile wins, right? So your profile will determine whether or not you can create, read, edit, and delete on objects. Your role will determine which records of that object you can access. Okay. So nice way to remember profiles, how you see Salesforce, what can you do in Salesforce, but your role will ultimately control which records in Salesforce you can access, which accounts can I access, which opportunities can I access. Okay, great questions. Yes? Is there a report? Okay. When you want to look at your sharing rules, we know we can go into sharing settings. There is no report that I know of that you can run to see your sharing rules. Yeah, so it means going into security control, sharing settings, and just seeing that right there. Okay. For your role hierarchy, right, again, we go into manage, yeah. Check out the App Exchange. The App Exchange is a website. Have you heard of the App Exchange? Yeah. Check out the App Exchange because there may be some partner applications or tools out there that will allow you to see your role hierarchy and manage your role hierarchy outside of this traditional view. Okay.
If you have a opportunity sharing rule that's in conflict with the account opportunity sharing rule,
okay.
Which one wins?
All right, good question. And this may come up, right? Generally, if you have an organization-wide default that's somewhat restrictive, an administrator often has to create lots of sharing rules in order to be able to share out information amongst groups and users. So the question is, what happens if you have conflicting sharing rules or sharing rules that overlap? And the rule is that the most permissive will win. So what happens is, if in one sharing rule, okay, so if we take a look at the screenshot here, if you imagine if those two sharing rules were very similar groups, if one of the access levels on account said private and the other one said read-only, which one would win? Read-only. The most permissive will win. Okay? Good question. Yes. Thanks.
In dashboard folders, our executive VP didn't want to see all of the dashboards we had out there. So I was using public groups to restrict his access versus granting access. When you set up a public group, you can see the members, and then you can also see, you can expand the list to see all the view the users. Does that mean everybody in the members and above in the role hierarchy can see the records that I've granted to that public group?
All right, that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked that. So we know that we can use folders in Salesforce. We use folders in a few areas. We use folders to manage our reports, to manage our dashboards. We also use folders to manage email templates as well as documents. Okay, so those are the 4 areas that we use folders. So when it comes to folder access, right, if you're organizing your reports, right, the way that you give access is that you put all the reports in a folder and you give access to that folder. So you decide which roles, which public groups, or roles and subordinates that you want to see those reports in that reports folder. This is one area that role hierarchy doesn't kick in. Okay, so it is explicit, which means that if I have a reports folder and I give access to my U.S. sales reps, the U.S. sales manager will not be able to access that folder unless I add them to that folder access. Great question. Reports, dashboards, documents, and email templates. The 4 areas. Yeah.
In my company organization, we have inside sales team,
Okay.
and we took away the create new accounts, contacts, opportunities, and leads.
I think we're crossing over. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi. In my organization, we have a group of inside sales, and we have taken away the create new button from the accounts, contacts, opportunities, also the leads. But it also took away the convert button. We want to have the convert button, but on it, they're not able to create a new contact, opportunities, leads. But is there a way to be independent?
That permission goes hand in hand. So those of you that are using the leads area in Salesforce, you'll probably be familiar that when you have a lead, once you've qualified that lead, you can then convert them into an account, a contact, and an opportunity, right? That's a process that's out of the box of Salesforce. The answer is the permissions are hand in hand. If I go to convert a lead, I'm going to create an account, an opportunity, and a contact. I have to have those permissions on my profile. Not that I know of out of an out-of-the-box functionality. You know, when I do talk about the things that you can and can't do, I am talking about out-of-the-box functionality. I'm sure there's ways that you can do it through Apex, through some coding, but out-of-the-box functionality I'm not aware of. So the question is they want to be able to, the question is that they wanted to convert, but they didn't want to give them all the permissions to create new records. Yeah. Okay. Yes? The delegated administrator was introduced earlier this year. If we go into the setup area, I won't get into too many details, but I can spend some one-on-one time. If we go into admin setup, and if you go into manage users, and you don't go into manage users, you go into security controls. And there we have it. So under security controls, this is delegated administration. This is where you can set up, this is a new functionality that was introduced earlier this year. And this functionality gives the system administrator the ability to assign a group of people, or maybe just one person, the authority to create new user records. But you control, as a system administrator, you control a subset of what profiles you want them to be able to assign, and also which roles. And you also can give them the ability to log in as the users below them in the role hierarchy that they're managing. Okay. Okay. All right. No more questions. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Great questions. Thanks for a fantastic session. I hope you enjoy the rest of Dreamforce. And I'll be running some workshops tomorrow on creating dashboards for driving agent productivity and also reports. So I hope to see some of you in my class tomorrow as well. All right, excellent. Thank you very much.